And we are welcoming in Scott Faber now, Senior Vice President of Government Affairs at the Environmental Working Group. Scott, good evening. Thanks for being here.
Great to be with you, Natasha.
Scott, is the EPA turning a blind eye to these dangerous forever chemicals, and why?
Unfortunately, the EPA is not turning off the tap of these chemicals from the polluters who knew they were poisoning their workers in the 60s and their neighbors in the 70s, and ultimately all of us. And they're continuing to allow these polluters to send their PFAS wastes not only into our rivers, but to our wastewater treatment plants, where then they are then sold to farmers who unknowingly contaminate their fields.
The EPA could require that sludge fertilizer is tested for forever chemicals before it's spread on a single additional acre of farmland. Is there any reason why the EPA shouldn't do this immediately?
You know, a lot has been made of the fact that the companies that make these chemicals have swept it under the rug. But the EPA has known these chemicals are toxic since the 1980s and only began to address them meaningfully last year. They still haven't told these companies that you have to stop using our rivers and our land as your dumping grounds. And at a minimum, they could require the water utilities that produce sludge to test it and tell farmers that they may be contaminating their soil forever if they use this contaminated fertilizer on their farm fields.
How does it hit your heart, frankly, knowing that 48 states are still spreading this sludge, potentially unknowingly? These farmers think they're doing their civic duty.
No, I mean, these are the people who feed us. They work all day, every day. They work around the clock to make sure we all have enough to eat. And they're only now just learning that they've been poisoning their fields without their knowledge, without their consent, and may lose everything because the polluters hid it from all of us. They hid it from the water utilities, and then in turn ultimately hid it from the farmers, that they were going to poison their fields in a way that may make them unusable for growing food. And what's really worrying isn't just that farmers will lose everything. Of course, that's terrible. What we're learning more and more is that it's not just the PFAS in our drinking water that is causing all of us to have PFAS in our blood. It's also the PFAS in our food, and maybe more that it's in our food that is causing all of us to have PFAS in our blood. And these aren't regular chemicals. These are chemicals that are called forever chemicals because they not only last so long in the environment because they're so hard to break down, they're also called forever chemicals because they stay in our bodies for so long, causing cancer, causing cardiovascular disease, making it harder to start a family, making our vaccines less effective.
Yeah, in 97% of our blood, and the USGS says at least 45% of our drinking water. You know, yesterday we spoke with EPA's Assistant Administrator for the Office of Chemical Safety and Pollution Prevention, Nicole Friedhoff. Let's listen to what she had to say on the agency's willingness for change. I want to get your reaction.
We have done more in the last 4 years to address the decades of inaction on forever chemicals than any EPA has ever done before. And I am the first one to say that there's more we can do, there's more we must do, and there's more that we will do. But we've made some extremely strong starts.
Yeah, she says the agency is doing more now than ever before. What is your response?
Well, it's certainly true that the drinking water standard, the federal standard, will provide 100 million people cleaner water. That is an historic step, probably the most important drinking water success story in the last half century. But that doesn't mean that while all of us are paying our drinking water utilities to take PFAS out of our water, that the EPA should continue to allow the polluters to keep putting it back in. That doesn't make any sense. And Michael Regan, the head of the EPA, and President Biden should not miss this opportunity before they leave to tell the polluters, you can't keep treating our rivers, our wastewater treatment plants, our farms as your dumping grounds. You need to start taking this PFAS out of the sludge. You need to, at least at a minimum, test the PFAS in the sludge to make sure that we're not further contaminating our farm fields. So while certainly true, no administration's ever done more to address PFAS, there is a lot more to do, especially to protect our farmers.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.